Hey there, courageous leader. Looking for a place to connect, share, and collaborate with other ambitious, impact driven powerhouses? Well, look no further. Join me and dozens of other bold, action oriented women in leadership in the Lead Hers Lounge. The Lead Hers Lounge is a no cost monthly meetup for listeners of the show and my broader She Leads community so that we can come together and uncover opportunities to collaborate with each other and magnify our impact. We meet monthly on the fourth Wednesday of every month. Details to save your spot for the next no-cost meetup is in the show notes below, or you can head over to sabinegedeon.com/lounge to register. Again, that's sabinegedeon.com/lounge to register and save your spot. I'll see you in the lounge. Thank you for joining me on another episode of She Leads Now podcast, where we help career and entrepreneurial women gain the tools to develop a success mindset, create winning strategies, build collaborative relationships, and take bold action towards creating impact and fulfillment in their lives and careers. I'm your host, Sabine Gedeon, and I'm on a mission to awaken and activate women and emerging leaders so they can tap into their innate leadership ability, elevate their influence, and create the impact they were destined to make. If you're ready to up-level your confidence, courage, and influence, you've come to the right place. Join me weekly for insights, strategies, and resources to help you grow, develop, and embody the leader you were meant to be, so that you can make the impact you know you are called to make and establish the legacy you've always dreamed. The world eagerly awaits the emergence of your brilliance, impact, and influence. So with that, let's dive into this week's episode. Welcome to another episode of She Leads Now podcast. I'm your host, Sabine Gedeon, and I'm also the founder of She Leads Network, where we empower impact-driven women to lead courageously in life and in business. You can learn more about She Leads Network at sheleadsnetwork.com. So excited to have you here today. And speaking of, we are going to be talking about courage and how to make a habit out of taking courageous action as a leader, as an individual. And what sparked this topic is I myself have been challenged with tapping into my well of courage in these last few weeks. And I wanted to share some of the things that have come to me both through this incident and previous, occurrences in which I was invited to tap into my well of courage. So before I get into the meat of this, just a couple questions and things that I want you to noodle on as you listen to this episode. How many times have you been faced with making a decision or taking action towards something when you couldn't see the full picture or the outcome, but yet you knew it was the right thing to do? And how many times have you been presented with an opportunity that seemed good, but your fears and your insecurities tried to talk you out of moving forward? And then lastly, or better yet, when was the last time you took a really big risk in hopes that the outcome would turn out positively? In each and every one of these cases, my friend, you were acting courageously or you acted courageously. You know, oftentimes we think that courage, that it's this external thing that people have or this thing that only certain people have, when in reality, we all have wells of courage. And truth be told, you know, we don't move or act with courage by itself. Oftentimes, we are only able to move and act in courage when fear is present. And so the way that I like to see courage is that it's not the absence of fear, but it's moving forward in action in spite of it. And so when I think back to the times that I've had to act courageously, and I've had to think of these times very recently because of the challenges that have been brought before me, you know, I realized that I was 100% frightened. I was scared. I had all the insecurities, all the doubts, all the worries, and all the fears. But something inside of me kept pushing me forward, even with the fear and insecurities and doubt and worries and everything else. And so, I've been recalling these last few weeks times where, I've had to take massive action or massive courageous action. And a couple of those incidents that come to me, or a couple of those situations that have come to me, were when I left corporate with no clients and, a half-baked plan of how I was going to generate revenue. I was terrified, but I did it anyway. I took that courageous leap. When I moved to California without knowing a soul in San Diego, I was terrified. But again, I took the courageous action because I felt that that's where God was leading me. And most recently, when I restructured my business to focus less on individual coaching and more on creating a professional development platform and training community that was outside of my comfort zone. But again, something inside of me said that this was the shift that I needed to take. And so, those are three big things that, just within recent years, if you will, that terrified me. They absolutely terrified me and gave me pause and challenged me to look at all of my worries and fears and insecurities and all that. But I moved forward anyway, courageously. So those were some of the big things. There have also been small things that I've been recounting lately. And I'll share with you within this episode a little later why I had to recount these things and why I'm even recounting these things now. Some of the smaller things that took courageous action included difficult conversations with employees or difficult conversations with clients and potential clients, confronting the behavior of people in my inner circle, setting boundaries with friends and families, communicating boundaries and restricting access to me, negotiating a contract with a potential client. Those are smaller things, or what I would say were smaller things that required courageous action because there were parts of me that were afraid to initiate these conversations. There were parts of me that were worried about, how people would perceive me or other individuals' emotional responses to what I had to say. But I knew that within me, if I didn't speak up, if I didn't address, or if I didn't challenge what was taking place, then I wouldn't feel good about me or about the relationship. And so, therefore, in an attempt to improve things, I had to get past my fears, get past my worries, get past the, concerns around others' perceptions of me to take action and to address them. So those are just a couple examples that I've had to go back through my mental Rolodex to think through. As I've been sharing some of these, you hopefully have been thinking through some of the things, some of the decisions that you made, or some of the courageous acts that you have embarked on in recent years, or maybe just as recent as last week. Big and small, we as leaders are challenged every single day with opportunities to either cower in fear or rise up and act courageously, make courageous decisions, or model courageous behavior for those we're leading. So the question isn't really, have we done courageous things, right? But rather, how can we act courageously more consistently? And we know that, like all things, right, everything that becomes a habit takes practice, it takes an intentionality. So is the case for becoming a courageous leader. It requires practice. The more we do it, the more it'll come naturally. And eventually, we develop this habit of acting courageously. So you may be wondering, why is leading courageously important? And why should we even strive to make a habit out of it? Well, I have three reasons why. First of which, if you think about the time that we're living in right now, we're living in a time of extreme uncertainty. Never in our lifetime, or at least not in mine, has there been so much misfortune and division in our society. Our communities are in disarray. The financial systems we've come to rely on are becoming increasingly unstable, and the list just goes on. So, as leaders, we're challenged daily to make these decisions that impact our families, our businesses, our organizations without any certainty of how things might work out. It's in fact in these times that we have to tap into our wells of courage in order to face any obstacles that may arise. Second reason why we should strive to make a habit out of leading courageously or taking courageous action is because we all know by now, or at least we should know by now, that growth doesn't happen within the confines of our comfort zones. It happens right outside of it, or maybe even far from it. Growth is contained in those opportunities that scare us and challenge us to see ourselves differently, as well as those that challenge our beliefs of what's possible. If we desire to grow as individuals, leaders, business owners, community leaders, and so on, we must challenge ourselves to seek out opportunities to exercise our courage. Meaning, rather than clinging to safety or the familiar, we should be looking to at least dip our toes in the waters, test out new solutions, explore different ways of doing things. And let's be real. Just because we explore or try something new doesn't mean we have to stay there or continue doing that thing, whatever it is. But at least we will have given it a chance and hopefully learn something new in the process. The last key benefit or result I want to share is that what it does or will do for your self-confidence and your self-esteem. When you can look back and recall the decisions you made or courageous action you took in spite of your fears, insecurities, worries, you name it, you will see or uncover the evidence you need to help you act courageously more and more often, which in return will boost your self-confidence. When we're faced with a new situation or a new opportunity that perhaps we have not done before, our mind goes into protective mode. And you've heard me talk about this before, and if you haven't, here you go. Our minds go into protective mode. And what we experience as a result of our mind going into protective mode is the fear, insecurity, and the worry that I shared. However, when we can take a step back during those moments of uncertainty and during those frightful moments and, those times where things aren't clear, and we can recall previous times in which we've had to take courageous action, previous times where we tapped into our wells of courage and yielded positive results, then we allow or we invite our mind to work with us and to support us in actually moving courageously in whatever this new thing is. And so, if you recall at the start of this episode, I shared that I have been challenged in these last few weeks to step outside of my comfort zone and to act courageously. And again, it doesn't mean that I wasn't afraid. It doesn't mean that I wasn't doubtful. It doesn't mean that the insecurities didn't come up. But the way that I was able to move forward and take action every time something arose was me taking that step back to recall the previous instances in which I acted courageously. And I thought through the big moments, like I mentioned before, leaving corporate, changing up my business model. And I also thought of the small times, having those courageous conversations and, negotiating for things that I wanted. And it was in doing so that I was able to, I want to say to an extent, train my mind or, activate my mind to support me so that I could move forward in what was being presented to me presently. That's really the third benefit. When we're intentional about taking courageous action consistently, not only does it help us, in the moment and when we're taking that courageous action, but as time goes on and, we continue to grow and we continue to expand and, we're reaching new heights and new levels, when that fear comes, guess what? You have built a repository of instances and times in which you acted courageously that where in previous situations, you may have fallen down the pit of fear, and then it took you months before you acted. It actually helps to speed up the time in which you're able to make decisions to move forward courageously. So let me say that a little differently. The more you're able to act courageously, whether it be in the big things, the big leaps, and even the small day-to-day things that take place in your life or in your business, as you grow, as you develop, and as you are invited to step into a different level or to become a higher version of yourself, rather than it taking a long time for you to, tap into that well of courage or, really muster up the strength to move forward, it actually begins to condense the time because you've built that evidence. And, one of the key things that I want to leave you with is that we are acting courageously every single day. I've shared in the past, to keep a brag book as a way to celebrate your wins. I would invite you, regardless of whether or not you have a big leap presented before you or just, day-to-day decisions, that you keep a journal that allows you to recount every courageous action you've taken, every difficult conversation that you've pushed yourself to have, everything that you were able to do in spite of your fear, every time you got up to go to the gym when you really didn't want to. Just start to think about the ways in which you have showed up courageously for yourself, and keep a notebook, keep a journal with those, because what you're going to see as you continue to grow and as you develop as a leader and as you move forward in life is that the more courageous action you take, the shorter the time frame it's going to be for you to take more and more courageous action and to make more and more courageous decisions. So to recap, habitually taking courageous action is a necessity in times of uncertainty because it'll help you weather the storms of life and of business. It'll help support your growth as a leader, allowing you to learn and explore new opportunities. And it'll help boost your self-confidence and decision-making ability so that you begin to close the gap in terms of how quickly you can move forward in making decisions that will help you grow or expand into your next level. So that is what I have for you today. Thank you so much for tuning in. Hopefully this was helpful to you, whether you are facing a big leap right now or just in the day-to-day decisions you need to tap into your well of courage. I invite you to join me in the very first Leaders Lounge, which is taking place on February 23rd, the first one, which is this week. Actually, you can get the information to join the Leaders Lounge. It's completely free, but you have to register in the show notes below, as well as any freebies and resources and links to connect with me. I'm excited to connect with you again next week with an interview with another female powerhouse who is leading and setting the example for the next generation of leaders. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of She Leads Now. Be sure to join us next week for another transformative discussion to help you grow, develop, and embody the courageous leader you've always been. Be sure to subscribe to the show to get alerts when new episodes drop, and join us for our next Leaders Lounge meetup on Zoom. Details and dates for future sessions are included in the show notes below, so take a look there or head over to sabinegedeon.com/lounge to register and hold your spot for the next session. Again, that's sabinegedeon.com/lounge to grab your spot. Excited to connect with you all inside the lounge. Talk to you soon.